Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. We are talking fantasy baseball. My name is Eric Henriksen alongside Josh Day, and it's been a cold week. That makes it tough for baseball. But on today's show, we're gonna try and keep it a little warm. We're gonna talk about who to add and who to drop. We're gonna play a brand new game called Barrels, Bombs, and BS, which we teased last week. But first, a very exciting announcement starting this week, we are going to be expanding to 2 episodes per week. That's right, we'll be talking fantasy baseball twice as much. Double the fun, Josh. Double the fun. Beginning Wednesday, April 16th, we're debuting a shorter episode we're calling the Midweek Minute with the S in parentheses. When you look at the thumbnail, you'll get it. Where we catch you up on any important news and notes, injuries and call-ups, really anything that we think you need to know to get that advantage in your leagues. So it'll be a very fun little episode coming to you. Gonna try and aim for Wednesdays and Sundays for 2 episodes a week. But it's very exciting. We're expanding. So like we said in our very first episode, we're gonna grow, and this is that first step. So really, let's just get into it.
Let's get into it, man. Let's talk baseball.
I know we said let's get into it, but we just have to highlight something I think that we noticed all week. I'm sure you noticed and you've felt
Oh
it on
yeah.
your fantasy teams because if you were lucky enough to get through this week without any injuries, share some of that juju with us because
Yeah,
we
not me.
we did not escape that injury bug. This was not a great week for injuries. I'm just going to name a few, and these are some pretty big names: Ketel Marte, Wyatt Langford, Matt McClain, Jackson Merrill, Pablo Lopez. All went down with soft tissue injuries this week, which
Justin Steele.
Justin Steele, another one, just to name a few of the guys, which I am personally going to blame the weather on. I think these soft tissue injuries, hamstrings, just like not like elbow, ligament, or sprained knees. We're talking like muscular injuries here. I'm gonna blame the weather. I don't know. Are you gonna blame the weather?
I think it's a case of a bunch of guys sitting around all off season and then suddenly having to be physically active to be blowing out their hamstrings. No, I don't know. It's the start of the season. I think hamstrings are annoying, but it could be a lot worse. In one of our leagues, I actually just traded for Pablo Lopez, so that was a fun surprise this week. But again, it's just a hamstring, so as long as it's not like an elbow or a shoulder thing, I guess it could be worse.
Yeah, I think for a pitcher, the hamstring is really not that big of a deal. For a guy who's got to run the bases like Marte or
Yeah.
Merrill, kind of a little bit worse of a situation. But
Yep.
Wyatt Langford hurt his oblique,
Yep.
and at least it was the other oblique, not the one that was bothering him during spring training. But we've gotten no word so far on the severity, so we don't know if that's a 6-week oblique or a 3-week oblique or a 10-day oblique. Some clarity would be really nice, Texas. So could we get that? And maybe we'll have that for you on the midweek minutes this week. Little tease there.
I mean, out of all of them, I'm the most concerned about Matt McClain,
Yep.
just because of his track record with health, which has not been stellar at all. Sadly, I think this is keeping up with the trend, and hopefully you had a contingency plan when drafting him.
My biggest concern is Ketel Marte as a Ketel Marte investor, and
Oh,
I've
yeah.
been an investor when he's hurt this hamstring before. So this is not a new occurrence for him either.
Plus, isn't he on the other side of 30 as well?
I think he is 30. If not, he's 31 and fresh off a contract extension. I believe he signed 6 years, $100 million or something. It was a very team friendly deal relative to what we've seen lately
Yes.
for all-star caliber players. MVP caliber players, because I believe he was in the MVP discussion last season. Anyway, enough about the weather, enough about the injuries. Just wanted to flag that for everyone because we're really going to dedicate a lot of this episode to who to add and who to drop so that maybe you can pick up some of these guys for your injury replacements. Or maybe, flip over the back end of the roster like we talked about last week. But let's start with the hot hitters, names that we've sort of explored a little bit. some guys we haven't mentioned: Tyler Soderstrom, Kyron Paris, Wilyer Abreu, the vet George Springer, Ben Rice, and post-hype sleeper Victor Scott. So, Josh, do you have any interest in any of these guys as maybe a Ketel Marte, a Langford, a McLean, a Merrill replacement?
Yeah, I think I have varying interest between all of these guys, I'd say, depending on what your need might be. I think the most interesting to me are Tyler Soderstrom and Ben Rice, just based on what they're doing under the hood. I think Soderstrom's power seems to be legit. I'm not sure that he's going to be, sustaining these ratios. I kind of see him more as a 230, 240 type hitter. And Ben Rice, he's moved up in the order, and he seems to now be playing against left-handed pitching, and the Yankees seem to believe in him. And I love how hard he impacts the ball. So it'd be interesting to see how he develops as the season progresses. Um, Victor Scott, I don't know if I really buy it. I think you know, I think people showed up for the speed, and I think that's probably, at the end of the season, what he's going to excel at the most. So if you need steals, I think absolutely pick him up. I think he's at best a 250 hitter, though, with maybe 15 home runs at his ceiling.
I think 15 is being very generous.
But I said peak.
Yeah, maybe in like 3 years in his peak. I would say I'd say Victor Scott will be lucky to hit 10 home runs. Speed is definitely his calling card. 250 average. I agree with you that Ben Rice is probably the most interesting because of the offense that he plays in the team context. Um, I will flag that his 71% contact percentage is a little worrisome,
hmm
but he's leading off for the Yankees, and this is a guy with a good history of a good walk rate. I mean, he's walking 16% of the time so far this season, but if you look at his minor league track record, you're looking at double digits just about at every stop. So this he's got a good eye, and he's maybe figuring it out with the bat actually when he does swing. 97.5 average exit velocity, man, that's
Yeah.
good. So I agree with you. Ben Rice might be the most interesting, but I think the most curious case is Kyron Paris in this group because he's just kind of come out of nowhere. If you watch him swing, he looks like Aaron Judge swinging the bat. Uh, However, his contact percentage is atrocious. So
It's terrible.
do you think he's just a flash in the pan?
Oh yeah. I think he's this, every season at the beginning, there's always a player that, is a flash in the pan. Seasons before there was Seth Beer, Yermin Mercedes, Jared Kelnick, Trace
You're mean.
Thompson. Yeah, the Yerminator. These guys that have like these hot start weeks, and everybody is, declaring them the next, top 10 hitter ascended. And, we had never really heard of these guys before. I think it's a nice story that he worked with Aaron Judge's hitting coach. Um, but again, I've never heard of him before. And looking at his under the hood at his plate skills, that's 17% swinging strike rate.
That's
Yikes.
bad. That's bad.
Again, if you need like a replacement for an injured player, or like one of your guys is off to a slow start, sure, pick him up, see if he can, sustain this for a week or so, or however long this lasts. But I don't see this as something you're gonna use all year in your lineup.
Part of the strategy in a head-to-head categories league is, maybe you pick up the hot bat, you juice that orange, and then once it's juiced, you pick up the next hot guy, right? So,
Yeah.
I mean, I picked up Kyron Paris in our 12-team league, just because I needed a utility hitter. if he's terrible in a week, I'll just drop him and pick up the next guy. It's really not that big of a deal. I'm waiting
Yeah.
for Ronald Acuna to come back. So once Acuna is back, I don't need that spot either.
So
So
what do you mean you're not going to trade away Acuna now that you have Paris?
not at
Paris ascended.
not at all. Last player in this group I just wanted to drop a quick note about is George Springer, only because he's been a useful player in the past for quite a few years. And every once in a while, we do see veterans kind of just come back to life for a little bit. But George Springer could be useful all season long because we have a distinguished track record, even though we've seen signs of decline over the last few seasons. But moving on to the next group, I'm calling this the Firing Fireballers. I know, very original. These are the pitchers that have been of interest across the industry so far. We've got Brady Singer, Jordan Hicks, Tylor Megill, not his brother, but Tylor Megill of the Mets, Chris Bubic, Chris Bassett, Casey Mize, and Jose Soriano. Josh, any interest in any of these guys?
Yeah, I think there is. I think Tyler McGill, definitely Chris Bubic. I think Chris Bassett, I could see riding this and seeing where it goes if he's available in your league. Jordan Hicks.
I would say I'm most interested in Chris Bubic, just because we heard about him changing his arm angle, I believe, his mechanics a little bit. This was a couple years ago before he had Tommy John surgery, and we've never really got to see that happen. I think he pitched maybe 14 innings before he got hurt that year, but they were real signs of improvement and skill change. Then he
Hmm.
came back last year, was really great out of the bullpen. And so far, he's been great in his few starts this season. So I'm really interested in Chris Bubic. Plus, he plays in a great pitcher's park. And I would say, yeah, Chris Bassett, because again, we have a track record of him being very good despite his age. He's 36. Before 2024, we had a 3-year stretch of Chris Bassett being a number 3 fantasy starter for your teams. Good ratios, decent strikeout rate. So I'd say the two Chris's, spelled differently,
Hmm.
are the ones of interest to me. And I think the orange you're going to want to juice right now is probably Casey Mize and Tyler McGill. I think Brady Singer is one of those been there, done that. Jordan Hicks is not going to have the stamina to do it all season because he's throwing harder. This is a guy with a history of arm issues, but now he's throwing harder for longer. So that's a recipe for disaster. And then I don't know if Jose Soriano has the skill to keep
Yeah.
it up.
I'm skeptical of McGill being able to sustain what he's doing. Based on what we've seen of him in the past, he seems to, start off strong and then kind of falters. Even starting out this in the early goings of this season, he seems to not be, he doesn't really go that long into his starts. I mean, a lot of pitchers aren't going long into starts, but
4.5 walks per
you
9
know,
innings so far.
I think yeah, his command isn't his strong suit. So given that, I would be a little skeptical about him sustaining any sort of positive outings, signs, whatever you want to call it.
I just want to say the last point on Casey Mize here. Now, he's looked pretty decent to start the season. His K rate is up over 9 K per 9. His expected ERA is 2 when his current ERA is 0.77. That's not a big deal because an expected ERA of 2 is still very good. However, 4.5 walks per 9. And then I know we've talked about this before on the pod. Our favorite predictive pitching stat is Sierra. It's not FIP or XFIP or xERA. It is Sierra, and his Sierra is over 4. So regression comes for us all, as I like to say. And regression is coming for Casey Mize. So buyer beware, juice that orange while you can. So moving on to the next group. These are also 3 pitchers. These I'm calling the struggling spring sensations. If you can't tell, I've liked alliteration for today's episode. Clay Holmes, Jeffrey Springs, and Gavin Williams. And before I throw it over to you, Josh, I just want to say, anyone who thought Clay Holmes was going to be a great starter, and granted, he's maybe 3 starts into the season, so things can change. I'll allow that, but anyone who thought Clay Holmes was going to be a great starter Why? You clearly did not watch him over the
Well,
last 4 seasons.
you've been a Clay Holmes hater for a while now, my
Yeah.
friend.
Throw strikes. Your job is to come in and throw strikes, and you can't. So, now let make him throw strikes for 6 innings? No. I'm out. I'm out on Clay Holmes. But Josh, sorry, gotta throw it over to you. The Clay Holmes experiment just drives me nuts. Anyway, Josh, Clay Holmes, Jeffrey Springs, Gavin Williams, these guys have kind of struggled out of the gate. What are you doing with them?
I think I only have shares in Gavin Williams out of the three. With as far as Clay Holmes, I was skeptical, maybe not as skeptical as you, but it seemed like the temperature check at the top of the season was like a lot of people saying, like, hyping him up as the starter, and that he was gonna have success as a starter, and we haven't seen him as a starter. At least I don't think we has he ever started games before this season.
In 2018, he started 4 games for the Pirates.
Okay, well, nice.
Yeah. Could have been an
um
opener at that point, honestly, because he only had 26 and a third innings pitched in 11 games. So
yeah, I think I was always skeptical just because we have not seen it before. I like track record of some sort, even if we're talking about like a rookie. I like to look at their minor league track records. Again, why I'm a little skeptical on Kyrene Paris is because his minor league track record is not great, and that's why we've never heard of him before. But anyway, with Clay Holmes, we've never really seen him as a true starter. So I was reluctant to invest in him, because I think perhaps he'll find usefulness, but I'm just wondering if, we're going to have an adjustment period from him going from a relief pitcher to a starting pitcher. I think that's kind of what we're seeing now. I believe in his last start, his velo was down, from 94, 95 to 92. Um, so I think expect bumps in the road for sure. Now, I think with Gavin Williams, it's I think early on it's his pitch mix, like, and his velo I think was down. But he just doesn't have his cutter to pair with his fastball, and I think he's driving up counts. He's not being efficient, and unfortunately, it looks like it's going to be a bit of a process to seeing what he can develop into. If he's going to take that next step forward, I think that remains to be seen.
Gavin Williams has a swinging strike rate of 13%. And I do wonder if something like the cutter or really his secondary arsenal is kind of on the back burner at the moment because he's not able to get such a good grip. He does pitch for Cleveland, and it's cold. It's cold right now, right? And you can't use
Yeah.
sticky stuff. So I'm wondering, with a guy who doesn't have the greatest control to begin with, if he's hesitant to throw something that requires a little bit less of a standard grip than a fastball. That's less of a tangible
Yeah.
analysis and more of like just like looking at him as a human being and having
Yeah.
pitched in cold weather myself. But yeah, I agree with you. I think it might just take some time for him to get into it. I would not give up on him. He had a
No.
good game against the White Sox, but confidence is important for a young player, I think, and just being able to get a good one out of the way could be helpful for him. And I know neither one of us really touched on Jeffrey Springs, but that's because I think we just think he is what he is. You're gonna get the good and the bad, right? It's a guy who throws maybe 90 miles an hour. Okay, and then the last group that we have here are just an assortment of guys who were going in, the middle of drafts, maybe middle to back end, and they are guys that we were hoping would break out, but have kind of really struggled out of the gate, and that's Dustin May, Luis Robert, Jake Berger, Wilson Contreras, Tristan Casas, Dylan Cruz, and Luis Garcia, the second baseman for the Nationals. So, Josh, what do you do with these struggling players?
Um. Well, is Dustin May struggling, would you say?
Well, he's only got 7 strikeouts in 11 innings. He's got a high walk rate. The velocity hasn't quite been there yet. So I would say he's not necessarily helping you, but he's not hurting you, I suppose. Kind of like Luis Robert is actively hurting you.
So, so okay. So would you drop Dustin May for Matthew Boyd?
No, I would not. I believe in Dustin May more.
Would you drop Dustin May for Hayden Wesneski?
I would not, but I might drop Dustin May for the guys that we talked about earlier. Tyler McGill, Chris Bubich, Chris Bassett. I definitely drop him for Bassett.
Well, those guys are all taken.
I know, mostly by me.
So, uh, so no, I'm not dropping May. I mean, I think most of these guys I'm a hold. I think probably the only guy that I would drop would be Luis Garcia. I think maybe Jake Berger, but I think he's been a little unlucky to start the season because he currently has a BABIP of 100. And his K rate's 22%. I mean, I'd like him to walk more, but that's never really been his strong suit. So, I think a lot of these guys are struggling, but I don't know that I would drop them for short-term gain. I think if you have like a roster space, extra bench spots, I would cycle those bench spots and then just plug in players of the moment.
I know you're just asking me about Dustin May, but I can't help but think like Luis Robert is kind of not who everyone thought he was gonna be. Probably because that team is terrible.
Yeah. Team context is abysmal.
Oh, they do not have to throw him strikes, and I think the worst part is he will swing at those pitches out of the zone. He is a free swinger of like the Javi Baez ilk, but not quite as bad.
I mean, he's not hitting for power right now. His BABIP's down, his K rate's up, although it's always been hovering around the upper 20s. I mean, I've often wondered what the mentality of players are on really bad teams. Like, do they know they're on bad teams? Still, I have to wonder what, sort of group mentality is on really bad teams. They must know that they're bad.
I would say that you probably have an organizational level understanding of like, yeah, we're not trying to compete this year, right? Because I've heard retired players, basketball, baseball, football, talk about, yeah, we were on that team. We knew our expectations that year were, we weren't contending, but if we could just, be 500, or if we could just, sneak into the playoffs.
Yeah.
It's never like, oh, that was a rebuilding year. They'll never talk like that, right? As former competitors, but I do think, I do think you have to understand, like, yeah, we're not competing for a championship this year.
Right.
Perhaps Luis Robert feels that.
I kind of think he's going to get traded.
He has to, right?
I just feel like that team has nothing. The organization doesn't really have anything, and it's just kind of like they traded away Crochet. So like it just feels like they need to like get whatever they can for the assets that they currently have because I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't drop Robert. I know he was dropped in our 12 team league.
I saw you put in a waiver claim. Yeah.
If he can hit 25 homers, steal 30 bases, hit maybe 250, that's not bad to have on a 12 team a league.
I know you're looking at me and I'm going, I don't know about that. And here's why. We talked earlier about Kyron Paris's swinging strike rate of like 17%. That's exactly what Luis Roberts is, and that it was
Yeah, I saw
17.5%
that.
last year. It's not great. The good thing
It's
is,
really not good.
I mean, he swings so much that his called strike percentage is lower. So it's not like he's passive.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
just gets up there and he swings at everything. Look, no one was a bigger Luis Robert investor and believer
That's
than
true.
me
Yeah.
when he was coming up, and I am so disappointed with how things have gone for him. But
Yeah.
I don't want to spend too much more time on him. Anybody
Oh,
else?
I meant to ask you, I
Yeah.
meant to ask you in this another segment, just for fun. Who do you think will have the better season, Kyrene Paris or Victor Scott?
Oh boy. Oh man. Um. Oh, this is
Because
tough.
when I was looking into them for the show, I was like, oh, these guys are kind of profile similarly.
They do. Um, I'm gonna say Kyron Paris will end up being the more valuable option because there's clearly more power there, especially with the retooled swing.
I also wonder, like, when we hear stories of like swing changes and stuff, I wonder how long that lasts, like if they're actually sustainable versus like do they regress to what they had been doing before? Like we saw with like Jared Kelnick, I think.
Oh yeah. Oh.
Well, because that was a story too. Like there was like
Yeah.
all these stories. Oh, he retooled his swing. He was working with Mookie Betts.
Yeah.
Like drive line this. So I, I think it's all with a grain of salt.
Mhm.
I could look foolish at the end of this. Maybe he is an amazing player, but I'm very skeptical.
Look, I'll say this: if you make small adjustments to your swing, right? We hear, oh, he shortened his swing or he's quicker to the ball, this, that, and whatever. I think that's a little bit different than what's being termed as like a 180-degree
Oh, right.
change in your swing. So if you watch Aaron Judge and this particular hitting coach, they do something where they drop the back shoulder a little bit and the back elbow, and then they're coming through the zone basically on a flatter plane. I can't really explain it. I'm no expert on it, but it's different than basically what most guys do, which is throwing the knob of the bat at the pitcher and coming through the zone. So it's a different type of swing. So I'm wondering if because it's a different type of swing, I don't know. I think that might be more sustainable because it's totally different.
Well, but I think a big thing that people aren't talking about, sure, maybe he has a similar swing plane, but he does in no way does he impact the ball as
No,
hard as Aaron Judge.
no one
Like
does. No one.
currently, Harris has an 86 mile an hour exit velocity, which is not good.
Right. But I also wonder if that's because right, he's got a high swinging strike rate. So I'm wondering if that's just poor contact, but and then when he makes good contact, it clearly is gonna go. I don't know. It'll be really interesting to see the development,
Sure.
what happens with him. Anyway, uh, so the consensus on the list of Dustin May, Luis Robert, Jake Berger, Wilson Contreras, Tristan Casas, Dylan Cruz, and Luis Garcia, the second baseman for the Nationals. The consensus on that group: hold, patience. A lot of them are veterans. Cruz, I think, might be the biggest worry for me because we
Sure.
don't have an extended track record. Luis
No.
Garcia's been platooned already. The manager in Washington really has no interest in batting him against left-handed pitching. Just
Mm-mm.
none.
Out of all the Luis Garcias, I'm not sure any of them are worth a roster spot in fantasy,
Oh, wow.
and
Okay.
unless the deepest of leagues.
If you need a middle infielder and you can platoon Luis Garcia, we saw his upside last year, so maybe bench him for now. But
I mean, you and I were talking about starting that NL only podcast, but
oh, I would rather do anything else. Only leagues, like, I don't think I could handle the stress because you get one injury and then that you're done. You're
you're
done.
done for the season. Wrap it up.
Wrap it up. Oh, and then if you have to do fab bids on anybody who gets traded from the American League in
Oh yeah,
or across leagues, I should say. Oh, forget it. Forget.
yeah.
I could not handle one of those leagues. But that does it for who to add and who to drop. We gave you a lot of very interesting names. Just to sum it up real quick, I think we're most interested in Tyler Soderstrom, Ben Rice, Chris Bubich, Chris Bassett, Gavin Williams. Be patient with, and be patient with that giant list of names we just talked about of who you might be thinking of dropping because they're off to very poor starts. Again, we're like 2 weeks in,
Yeah.
so the patience thing still applies here. All right, moving on. We are going to play a fun game, a new game to the show, which we haven't debuted yet, and that's Barrels, Bombs, and BS. All right, Josh, Barrels, Bombs, and BS. This is going to be a hitting focused game this week. And the great thing about this game is we can tailor it to pitchers, we can tailor it to hitters. But what this is going to be is I'm going to give you a prompt. Let's say, and this is not on the list because we know the answer to this. Aaron Judge's early season power surge. You're going to tell me, is it either a barrel, a bomb, or BS? And barrel means it's perfectly squared up and on target. You should be able to expect that all season long. It's sustainable. Bombs might be safe, might be sustainable, but it could be dangerous and the bottom might fall out. Or BS, it's not real whatsoever. So we know for a fact that Aaron Judge's early season power surge, it's a barrel, it's sustainable. The man is on another level when it comes to being a power hitter, and he's becoming a great hitter too. Still chases the slider down and away a little too much for my liking, but doesn't mean I wouldn't invest in him if I had an early enough pick in either one of our drafts this year. We know what we're getting with Aaron Judge, but we might not know what we're getting with some of these other players, but we also might. Maybe the stat that I'm going to throw at you is different for them. So let's start here. A guy we've talked about earlier in the year. He is the answer to a trivia question for this season, and that's the guy who hit the first home run of the baseball season. That's Tommy Edman. Is Tommy Edman's power surge a barrel, bomb, or BS?
I think Tommy Edmonds' power surge is a bomb, although he hasn't hit for power per se in the past. I do like his improved contact. I like how hard he's hitting the ball right now. So be curious to see where this goes.
Next up, one of the guys that we talked about earlier today, that's Tyler Soderstrom. His hot start, he's tied with Aaron Judge, of all players, for the homer lead in baseball. Tyler Soderstrom's hot start, barrel, bomb, or BS?
I would say maybe this is a cop out, but I would say barrel his power, BS his batting average.
All right, so a little bit of barrel and BS from Tyler Soderstrom's hot start. I could see it, absolutely. All right, next up is another power hitter who we have a very good track record of, but something that he does not have a good track record of is batting average, and that is Kyle Schwarber. Kyle Schwarber, his batting average, barrel, bomb, or BS?
You know, it's a contract year for Mr. Schwarber, and I think he's wanting a heyday. So I'm going to say barrel.
I want to pause just for 1 second because I think what is fascinating about Kyle Schwarber is that the man hit 197 in 2023 and then last year hit 248. And so far this year with a BABIP of 250, which is only going to go up because of how hard he hits the ball, he's hitting 283. So I'm going to agree with you. It is a barrel for Kyle Schwarber. Next up, another veteran who we have a very long track record of, who's sort of settled into the kind of player we expect him to be the last 3-4 years. That is Alex Bregman. However, currently he is averaging 93.6 miles per hour on his exit velocity. Josh, are you buying him as swinging the bat harder? Is he going to be able to maintain this higher average exit velocity? Barrel, bomb, or BS?
Oh, this is a big old BS, big old pile of BS for me. Based on his track record, he's never hit it over 89 in the past. So I think maybe this is just the adrenaline of being on a new team and trying to prove himself or whatever you want to call it. But I don't see this sustaining through the whole season.
Next up, Logan O'Hoppe. Got off to a very similar hot start last year. He's got a barrel rate of 27%. Josh, a barrel of 27% for Logan O'Hoppe. Barrel, bomb, or BS?
I think this is another big old stinking pile of BS. I don't think this is sustainable for him, let alone many batters. So, yeah, I could see him, sustaining something maybe half of that, which isn't terrible. But no way he sustains that all season.
No, that one was almost a gimme.
Yeah.
I would bet the under on a 27% barrel rate.
Yeah.
Aaron Judge doesn't even have a 27% barrel rate. Next up is another guy we spoke about earlier in the podcast that we like and have some interest in. And if he's out there on the wire, pick him up. And that's Ben Rice. He's got a hard hit percentage of 72%.
Woo.
Josh, barrel, bomb, or BS?
Well, I guess I'll have to go with, the track record angle. I would, you know what? Since it's early and we can dream big, I'm going to go with bomb here.
Nice. Yep. I think that's the safe one. Might be sustainable, but it could fall off and then be very dangerous for his value. And then last up, another Yankee, his teammate Anthony Volpe set a new career high in max exit velocity of 110.5 miles an hour. He is the poster child for the torpedo bats. Josh, are you calling his new career high max exit velo a barrel, bomb, or BS?
I'm gonna call it a barrel. I like the way he makes I think he makes loud contact, and I think he's young enough to take a step forward. So I would call it a barrel.
And I'm going to throw in a bonus one here that's not on our rundown.
Uh-oh. I got to get the fan graphs.
I know he's not on the rundown. I wanted to throw a surprise one at you, and that is Corbin Carroll. 0 stolen bases, 5 home runs. He's got an ISO of 420. Let's pick one of those stats. Corbin Carroll, no longer an elite base stealer. Barrels, bombs, or BS?
Oh, I would call that BS without question.
When that ISO starts to come down and he's no longer hitting, extra base hits with every swing, I think he's going to start running. Because I think he's got to hit some singles eventually, right?
Maybe. He's got to, take a breather.
Anyway, that does it for Barrels, Bombs, and BS. That was fun. That'll be fun to do with some pitchers maybe in a couple weeks and see.
Sure.
Can we call it Barrels, Bombs, and BS with pitchers? They give up barrels. They give up bombs.
I think we can.
Yeah. We'll call it Barrels, Bombs, and BS when it comes to pitchers, too, and maybe we'll play that in a couple weeks. But that does it for this episode, man. All right, so next week what we'll do is we'll discuss strategies for exploring trades early on, because those can be really tricky, and we'll continue analyzing the insanity that is fantasy baseball in April, because any little hint of good or bad is amplified to the max in April here. But before next week's full episode, be sure to check out an all-new episode, the very first Midweek Minutes episode coming to you this Wednesday. So be on the lookout for that. How exciting. Please subscribe. We're available on all major podcast platforms. Give us a like, a 5-star rating, a kind review. We will read all of them. And if there's anything you want us to talk about, drop us a message. For Josh, I'm Eric, saying we'll see you on Wednesday.
See ya.